I am so excited for you to hear this conversation I had with my new friend, Dr. Joshua Straub. He and his wife have Famous at Home. They are counselors, they are speakers, they are authors, and wow, what excellent resources he provides for us as parents, as spouses, and even for grandparents. So here's my friend Joshua. Welcome to the Family Table. I'm Matthew Eford. Join me as I speak with parents, caregivers, and family experts about the joys and challenges of family life. We'll share the stories, advice, and insights that will help you build a loving and resilient family. Pull up a chair and join us at the family table. Welcome, everybody. This is Matthew Eford, your host. We are going to pull up a seat at the family table. I have my new friend here with me, Joshua Straub, and I'm so excited to hear from Josh. We have a mutual friend, Lance, who's a friend of the podcast, and he connected us. Josh is an author, a speaker. He has his own podcast. I'm so excited to hear from him and to learn from a fellow brother. Josh, tell me your family, the dynamic of your family, like what's the role that you play in it? Tell us your family makeup.
Yeah, thank you. So, first of all, it's an honor to be with you. Thank you for having me. So my name is Josh. My wife, Christy, and I have been married for 15 years, and we have three kids, Landon, who is 12, Kennedy, who is 10, and then we have a little bit of an age gap, and then we have Micah, who is 4. And so
Nice.
he's keeping us on our toes,
Oh, yeah.
and so it's awesome. And so yeah, my role as father, man, I think about my role is so many other things. There's so much that encompasses being a father.
Sure.
But to me, it's the greatest role that I have next to being a son of God, being a father to those kids, and getting to lead our family, and just being a husband to my wife it's the coolest privilege.
I
And
love that.
yeah, it's
So,
just so fun.
so something I'm really excited to hear about is doing the podcast with your wife, writing with her, speaking with her. Tell us about that dynamic. Like, how did that start? How did y'all get into doing that together?
Yeah, that is a dynamic. How much time do we have?
As much
Um,
time as you need.
it's been so I mean, we're both counselors by education, so that's what
Okay,
we're educated in. We met in grad school,
cool.
and we both had a heart for marriage and family from early on. And I think what happened along that way is we had a really difficult time with our first two. That's why there's an age gap. All right. So
Okay,
they're 12, 10, and 4. And the first two, my wife had really difficult pregnancies,
okay.
just different physical issues, sicknesses. And then neither one of them slept. Neither one of them acid, or
Wow.
acid reflux,
Yeah,
colic. I mean, we
sure.
were up all the time. The second one, Kennedy, our daughter, she really had stomach issues. So I mean, it went from bad to worse with
Yeah.
both of them. And
Wow.
I mean, we were. My wife defines it as hitting the bottom rung of life, and so we were really struggling in those early years.
Okay.
I wanted to figure out like what really matters when it comes to raising our kids, because I mean, at this point I had a PhD in counseling, and I had been helping juvenile delinquents and troubled families, and
Sure.
I kind of knew research and stuff in this area. But yet when you're in it, it's like God humbles you in the very thing that he calls you to, so you don't pull your
Yeah.
britches up too high.
Oh, yeah. I love that.
And so we really wrestled just looking at what really matters. And we started fighting for each other, and
Okay.
started fighting for each other's hearts in a really profound way. I remember coming home one day, and she's asking me. She said, "Josh, why don't you?" I went home telling her all about the day that I had, work, all those types of things,
Sure.
and she was, the way she tells the story, she was in her mom uniform, no makeup on, hair still in a ponytail, sweatpants from the night before, and banana puree spattered all
Sure.
over her
Yeah, yeah.
shirt,
Oh, yeah.
and she's just like in tears. She broke, and she said, "Why don't you ever ask me about what's on my heart?" And man, it was a wake up call for
Wow.
me, because I'm doing these things. I'm at leadership retreats. I'm learning how to be a great leader, and here I am not pursuing her heart. And she would say, to be fair, she had no idea what was going in her heart either at that time. But we made a decision from that point forward to make sure that neither one of us never felt like we weren't pursuing the other's heart.
Cool.
And there's been ups and downs. I mean, when you work together, we homeschool our kids, we work together, we homeschool together, we're married together. It has been a beautiful, messy journey of learning how to fight for each other and also be romantic partners while also being business partners while also
Sure.
being parents
Sure.
and being able to
And
navigate all those.
co-teachers.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, the whole
Yeah.
nine. So, yeah,
You got a lot of together time, right? So
yeah,
talk to me about, right, the shoulder. Some authors talk about shoulder to shoulder time versus face to face time, right? Like men typically shoulder to shoulder. Let's do something together. A woman wants, I want face. I want conversation. Talk to me about this idea of pursuing each other's hearts. I love that analogy. I love that distinction. But practically, what does that look like, Josh? So for speak to me, speak to the audience, speak to dads out there that say, I'm super busy. I'm not doing all the time with my wife, but give some advice around, okay, what can husbands do to intentionally start pursuing and checking in on their heart?
yeah. Great question. The Bible says that, to guard your heart, for it's the wellspring of life.
Yeah.
And I believe that when we get married, we're one flesh. We have therefore one marital heart that we need to guard. And Tim Keller talks about this, that, your life could be an absolute mess. And, but if your marriage is strong, you step out into the world in strength.
Amen.
But the opposite's also true. Your life could be falling apart, or I mean, which one did I say first? Yeah, your life could be falling apart. It could be in shambles. And if your marriage is strong, you step out in the world in strength. The opposite
Yeah.
is true.
The
Your life could be
opposite's
going
true. Yeah.
great. Marriage could be a disaster. You step out in the world in weakness. And so one of the ways that we decided to do that early on is, and this just comes, I genuinely believe I'm of the Pete Scazzero emotionally healthy spirituality
Okay.
standpoint, that you can only be as spiritually mature as you are emotionally mature.
Cool.
And therefore, we really need to identify what is going on in the inner world of our wives, what is going on in our inner world. And so the phrase that we often use is that what's going on within your spouse's heart matters more than what's going on between the two of you. Because
Okay.
so often when we talk to couples who are in arguments, they're like, "Yeah, we were arguing. I don't remember what the argument was about." But what do they remember? You remember how you felt.
Yeah.
You remember how your spouse made you feel. And so, one of the exercises we started doing from way back, whenever Christy asked me about why I did not ask her about what was going on in her inner world, one of the very first exercises that we started doing was what we call 15 minutes a day.
Okay.
And it answers your question. So we started saying, okay, I wanted to find out from her what was one positive emotion she felt that day and what was one uncomfortable emotion she felt that day. So in other words, did she
Wow.
feel
Yeah. Yeah.
content, excited, brave, happy, or did she feel jealous, embarrassed, angry, sad? And so and it didn't have to necessarily have to do with anything with me, but
Sure.
just let me into your
Yeah.
world
Yeah.
today and let me know what.
I want you to be
And
seen.
I want you to be seen. And then
Yeah.
for me to be able to share the same thing. And I'm telling you, if you practice this every single day with your spouse, doesn't take 15 minutes. It often will take less than that, but it can take longer than that. But what
Sure.
you've done is you've set the stage to be able to understand, to go lower than the business, to go deeper than the business of the day and just, take the
Sure.
kids here, take the kids there. We got to get dinner. It's like, no, what's happening? I promise you, this could save you thousands of dollars in therapy over the years
Love
if you
that.
could
So,
just
so
enter
what,
into each other's worlds. Yeah.
Josh, when do y'all do that? Is that a morning thing? Is that a lunchtime thing? Is that a nighttime thing?
Yeah.
Do you have it programmed out? I mean, are you that systematic of every day
No.
at 9 o'clock we have this conversation, or you just say
Yeah.
it's on both of our radars to have this conversation before we go to bed?
Great question. It had to be programmed first, and now it's become a lifestyle. And I
Cool.
just I coach everybody to go, if start with, find the time that best works for you. So for example, one time that really works for us is for a season, we would go for a walk after dinner, as a
Nice.
family. The kids would be riding their bike. Christy and I, you talk about side to side versus face to face. We're walking side by side. Kids are up riding their bikes, and we're doing it. We're having this
Yeah.
conversation while we're going for a walk after dinner. You know, one of the things I do say is, I do a lot with military spouses, and I'll say, don't just
Oh.
sit down, across the table from each other and look each other in the eye and say, how are you feeling? Like it's just going to be
Yeah.
awkward. Make it feel as natural as you possibly can.
Cool.
And I mean, it's now become such conversation that we are always doing this with our kids, with each other in our home. But I would say start with that initial, what works for you? Is it the
Cool.
morning? Is it the evening? Yeah, what works best for your
Okay. So
family?
so then let's take it as a dad, right? You're now checking on your wife's heart. Now let's take it to your kids, to the level there. You said you're having these conversations with your kids. How did you start that? What advice would you have for dads out there or moms out there that say, I've never had that tight conversation with my kid? How do you start those kind of conversations?
Yeah, that's a great question. Always, so the way that I describe this is we want to enter into their world. So,
Okay.
I'll give you a very fresh example. Just an hour ago, before we jumped on this podcast, my 4-year-old, it's pouring down rain today. My 4-year-old is in our driveway because I had to put his bicycle away because the puppy was chewing on it, and it was on the back porch. He wanted to keep it on the back porch, but the puppy is underneath the back porch. I moved it into the garage, and he's losing his mind, jumping up and down in the pouring down rain, 40-degree weather in the driveway. And I can look at that and I can go, all right, this is a matter of disobedience. You get in here right now. You need to
Sure.
listen to your dad. You're going to get sick, and that's, I think, the tendency many of us would want to go to. But there's something going on in his inner world right now that is causing him to do that. Now, sometimes it's because he's hungry or overtired,
Yeah.
right? And it's like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
we got to get sleep or food. But for me to be able to grab him, and I had to physically go pick him up and carry him in the house because he was not listening, which is disobedience, sure.
Sure.
But at the same time, truth without grace will always be received as condemnation. And so
Yeah.
if we just come down with truth all the time, they're not hearing it. They're not. And so I had to pick him up. I had to hold him and I had to take him in and I had to say, what what concerns you about your bike going to the garage? Well, Daddy, I want to ride the bike. I want to have it there ready to ride it when it stops raining. Now, it's not going to stop raining here for the next 2 days. He doesn't understand that.
Sure.
His brain cannot grasp that.
Yeah.
And so, I'm entering into his world. And then once I enter into his world, help him like have him feel understood. Then we can talk about the fact that he was disobeying and those things. But we always want to lead in grace first. And that's what I always say. Ask them, tell me, why does this matter to you so much? Or why does this, what is the importance of this? And so that's when they're in their reactive mode. That's when they're in their overwhelming mode. The way that I would do it in a proactive where they're not in their overwhelming mode, it's
Okay.
the same thing that you do with your wife. Like if you're tucking them in bed at night or you're sitting around the dinner table, instead of doing high and low of the day, do what was one positive feeling you had and what was one uncomfortable feeling. We have
Okay.
a children's book with a pull out feelings chart in the back, and you can hang the poster in their bedroom and or wherever and just get them to point, depending on their age, get them to point to the feeling that they're having that day.
Okay.
And especially when they're angry, there's always an emotion underneath the anger. And just going, did what was that? Oh, I felt disappointed. I felt sad, felt left out, whatever that is. Um, it's just,
Let me stop you right there. You said there's always emotion underneath anger. That's
yes.
I completely agree with that. I've never heard it worded that way. So talk to me more about as a dad with I have three young boys at home, 7, 4, and 2, and we get big emotions and
Yeah.
we're trying to have those kind of conversations like, okay, let's get more to the surface level or underneath what is going on here. What advice would you have? What are some follow-up questions, the way that you kind of dig in a little bit deeper there?
Yeah, great question. And we also have another children's book called What Do I Do with Anger, where we kind of walk through this,
Perfect.
systematically. And so, and again, I wouldn't say that there's a system to it. Relationships are gray area, they're messy, it's not going to always look perfectly. You're not going to always do it correctly.
Sure.
But, your ability to be able to pull a child aside, let's say it's, let's say two of your boys are just having sibling rivalry. I mean, we get this in our home where, one child, they're playing with the same toy and all of a sudden one storms off and is massively angry and the other one yells at the other, who storms
Sure.
off, and you're just going, all right, guys, what's going on? Is I'm just going to use this as an example, but it's walking to the one who walked away, following up with him and sitting with him and saying, tell me what happened. And of course, typically, especially for boys, it's usually going to be a blame. Well, my brother did this and my brother did that and my brother and my brother and my brother. Okay, so now help me understand. So what I'm hearing you say is that you're angry. Yes, I'm very angry. I'm angry that he did that. Okay, so let's take away what he did. What did you feel? Well, he took this toy. Okay, so did you feel like he wasn't going to share it? Was it, yeah, I wanted him to share it and he wasn't sharing it with me. Okay, so tell me about that. So now, and the way that we typically will do this is you can, like for your kids or even each other with your spouse, it's like you can take two chairs and sit them back to back. And the front
Okay.
chair is like the anger, right? It drives the bus. Anger will always drive the bus. So you're
Okay.
driving the bus that direction. Put another chair behind it. Have your son or daughter or your spouse sit in the front chair. I hear that you're angry because, then have them get up and walk to the back chair behind it and say, so now tell me what you're really feeling.
Yeah, cool.
Well,
I
I
love that.
always I always feel like my brother doesn't want to include me with his toys. I feel like I don't feel included. I feel left out. I feel alone, right? It's like and a lot for kids, we have to usually help them put
Sure.
language to this, but this is where feelings charts and things like that really come. And now all of a sudden they feel connected to you. Rather than you just disciplining them and saying, knock it off, you guys, stop doing that. You're going to timeout or, whatever we do. It's like, how do we make this relational and coach our kids through uncomfortable feelings is really to me, I think one of the most difficult, but also the most rewarding tasks of being a parent.
I love that. So how are you adapting that as your kids are getting older, right? You're having a different conversation with your 4 year old than your 12 year old. Talk us through like older parents, parents that have older children that are teenagers or preteen. What advice would you have with that same kind of analogy? Is it still setting up the two seats, or how are you navigating those
Oh,
conversations then?
yeah, 100%. Yeah, you're setting up the two seats. And I mean, my 12-year-old son, jiu-jitsu, comes home, just really upset about this one kid. And, he's just, losing his mind about it. I'm going, so I get him home, and I said, okay, so you're angry about this. Yes, I'm angry about this. Okay, so tell me why you're so angry. Because he's lazy and he doesn't take it seriously. And I was
Okay.
like, okay, so all right, so he's lazy and doesn't take it seriously. So tell me what's going on underneath. Like, why are you so mad about that? Well, because my coach might think that I'm lazy too. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. All right,
Yeah.
so your coach might think that you're lazy and you don't want to be seen as lazy. No, I want to work hard. I don't want to be seen as lazy. But and then what it does is it leads this conversation to go, and I don't want to tattle on him either. I don't want to be a tattletale. I don't want coach to think I'm okay. So
Sure.
now all of a sudden with your teenagers, you can start role playing situations where you're always going to have the lazy
Sure.
person in your life who isn't pulling their weight, whether you're in a job as an adult or whatever, and
Group
you're going to feel the
project. Yeah.
effect of it. Yep, it's like now all of a sudden, now we can role play scenarios of how should we handle this or what would be a great way to handle this. And that's kind of the way that I do it with my kids is we sit down, we talk about it. And usually my 10 and 12-year-old, my 10-year-old daughter is very, I mean, she's pretty mature. I mean, we'll role play these scenarios together, bring the two oldest in for those, and
I
that's
love
that's
that.
that's how I would suggest. I mean, that's what we're doing. Is I think role playing is a really helpful tool. We've seen it work really well in our own family.
I
So
love that. I love that idea, and it helps them to communicate the words they're feeling. Right. It
yes,
allows them to work through. I have this vision in my head. I have these fears in my head. I don't really. It's unclear, but as I speak it out, and the art of role playing, I love that. That is a fantastic piece of advice. I love that so much. So, Josh, what do y'all do in terms of like responsibility? You're instilling responsibility. You're teaching your children to become young men and women. Like you're growing them into that. What advice would you have for parents that are wanting to do that more? They're wanting to better equip their kids to be more responsible young men and women.
yeah, I would say increased challenge.
Okay,
I'm big time on emotional support, as you've already heard. So I think
sure.
that emotional support is everything. So if your kids feel safe and they feel supported, start to increase the challenge.
Okay,
And so if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see right here behind me we have netting right there. That's goat
yeah,
and
yeah,
fencing.
cool,
We decided a couple years ago to move more into homesteading because it gave our kids, chickens and goats and
sure,
dogs and it just animals in and of themselves give our kids responsibility. I don't mess with them a lot. I mean, I help the kids when they need help with bigger things, building, structures and things like
sure,
that. But for the most part, they're the ones doing the feeding. They're the ones doing the
cool,
research. They always have to do a research project on it before they can get an animal or before they can get
nice.
We want them to research it. We want them to do a project on it. We want them to present it to us. And so we're really up in the ante in those areas. If I go speak somewhere, or I usually take one child with me everywhere I go. They're
Nice.
running the book
Yeah,
table.
cool.
They're interacting with adults. They're seen as an employee, as someone who's a part of Famous at Home. And so we're really trying to challenge them and give them responsibility around the house that more than just chores. They're a part of this home. If dishes don't get done, there's a consequence for that for literally everybody, right?
Yeah,
And so we're constantly, we don't pay them for things that they should normally be doing as part of our household.
sure.
And so I just encourage to up the challenge, because your kids will rise to it. Like our 4-year-old, when he brooms and mops the floor of the kitchen, he is, I mean, he's always begging for more because there's so much, he's so proud of himself.
Cool.
And I think so. Now, I will say this too, and this is the toughest part about responsibility as a parent, is that we have to be willing to allow tasks and chores to not be done correctly or as fast as we would like them
Yeah,
to be
there
done.
we go. Say it again. Man,
And so in order to truly train your children, we have to grow as adults to not be caught up in the rat race, to go, I am more concerned about coaching the heart of my child than I am about this thing getting done correctly the way that I want it to, or getting done as fast as I would hope that it would be.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's an excellent distinction, right? For my wife and I, Hannah, we have had realizations with our boys, 7, 4, and 2, like I said earlier, that so often we are moving at a pace that is unsustainable,
Yeah.
and as a family, as individuals, and as a family, and it doesn't allow us to have the time and the grace and the patience that we is required. And so what we have done is we've made hard decisions to strip things away, and we just said we're just not going to do that anymore.
Yeah.
It's putting
So
us
good.
is putting us at a pace that is not sustainable for us as individuals, for us as a couple, for us as a family. And what that has done is it's allowed us to have a lot more empathy in those situations of, hey, buddy, I need this done. It's going to take 100 times longer than if I just did it myself. But I'm going to sit here with you in this moment because I've created margin in my life to be able to have that. So I
Yeah.
love that you brought that up. And we also homeschool. It's a great resource. It's not for everybody, but we're thankful for the opportunity to be able to do that. So
Yeah.
talk to me, Josh, about this idea of celebrating milestones, celebrating achievements as a family. Um, what are some ways that y'all do that? Helping your children hit those milestones or hit those things that you celebrate to help give them kind of rites of passage. Do you have anything specific for your family?
Yeah, I think the to answer your question there, the very first thing that we would do, and I would say it this way, is the biggest celebration and tradition in our house is Friday night Shabbat meal. So having
Okay.
a Sabbath.
Yeah.
So we practice Sabbath from Friday sundown to Saturday sundown,
Okay.
just because we go to church on Sunday, and so it's not truly rest.
Sure.
Saturday is a day of rest for us, and so we make Friday night meal just this massive, incredible feast. The best dessert, and we just want our kids to understand and learn that we live from rest. You're talking about the rat race, the busyness, the scheduled. I want them to truly understand that they don't have to accomplish anything to receive our love and affirmation, but
Cool.
that we live from rest. So that's our biggest feast. That's our greatest milestone. That's our greatest tradition. I think the bedrock of who we are as a family. And then from there, yes, I mean, if they, especially they're getting, they obviously are getting paid for, tasks that are outside the normal chores, and they're
Okay.
constantly asking, "Hey, Dad, can I help you, with the yard? Can I help you with this?" And then there's certain things that they're going above and beyond. We're gonna That for them is a mile. That's a way to earn, because especially they both have their own little ways. Like our daughter started a gumball machine business this past year, so
Oh, cool.
she's got a little business. So they both think entrepreneurially, and
Yeah.
my son's thinking about investments, and so they're constantly um that's a reward for them to
Sure.
think about that and how to grow in that. So
Sure.
that's one of the rewards. you know I, I think we try to do a great job of celebrating the good at every day. So, in
Okay.
Genesis chapter 1, it says, at the end of every day, God said it is good.
Yeah.
And I think so often we live from a place of scarcity that there's not enough time, there's not enough resources, there's not enough of whatever. But the rhythm that God gave us from the very beginning was every day going, it was good. It
Yeah.
was good. And I think that's for us the rhythm that we try to create is how can we constantly be looking at the good that was created and the good that we created. And so from behavior charts for our 4-year-old, getting, earning something out of a treasure box because of the way he's behaving to our two oldest, saving money for something that they would like to buy or invest in or getting animals because they want more animals and they've
Sure.
shown that they're responsible. I mean, we continue to increase animals on our little homestead because they are showing themselves responsible. And so
Nice.
the more that they show themselves responsible, the more we reward that.
I
So
love that. So talk to me about the Sabbath, right? John Mark Comer, I love Ruthless Elimination Hurry. That dramatically changed my life 5, 6 years ago, and I read it. That we practice that as a family. That we go through seasons of being really stringent on it, and then other seasons where we're not. But talk to me about the Sabbath, this idea of sundown Friday evening to sundown Saturday evening. What does Sabbath look like for your family? For those who may not be familiar with it, but what does that look like for you, Josh, in your home?
yeah. So we pretty much, I mean, all work and school work go to the side. We're not overly busy scheduling anything in our lives on Saturdays. For us, every now and again there might be a jiu-jitsu tournament or something, but we make that, hey, we go as a family. We're constantly trying to be together as a family
Okay,
on Saturday. So we all have so our Friday night we have our dinner. We have sometimes we'll have friends over for that dinner. We always usually end it with like a movie night or something like that with the kids,
cool.
or a game night. And then Saturday it varies quite a bit. Sometimes if Christy needs a break, she's going by herself. I'm hanging with the kids, and she's just getting a 2 to 3 hour time to be alone. Um, More so recently, because we fight for that throughout the week, we're both usually pretty healthy by Saturday because we're trying to live from a rhythm of rest. And normally, what we'll do there is we'll prioritize one or two of the kids. So if our daughter wants a mom's daughter date or a dad daughter date, we'll prioritize that. We're
Cool.
usually asking our kids, "What do you need this week? What do you need?"
Yeah.
And we usually try to follow that need, but we're always doing things of rest. So we'll go across the street. There's a river across the street. We'll go play at the river. My daughter and I like to draw together. We pull out and we
Nice.
draw.
Yeah, cool.
We're working in the yard together. So it doesn't look like I work with my head. So working with my hands is a break.
Yeah,
And so even doing yard work or my son loves carpentry. And so we've got a workbench and we're doing woodwork together or things like that. Those are Sabbath things for us
I
that
love that.
just what is life giving? Asking yourself what is bringing life to your family and stepping into those things.
I love that, and I love that distinction, right? And I've heard that before. That if you work with your mind, you should labor. You should rest with your hands. You work with your hands. You should rest with your mind. But this idea that a Sabbath is not. I'm just going to sit on the sofa all day and just lay
Yeah,
there and not
yeah,
do anything.
yeah,
No,
yeah,
no. I'm going to find things that give me life, that breathe life back into me, that give me energy, and this idea of spending time together as a family and being super protective of that. I love
yeah,
that. So
yeah.
Josh, tell us about when at home. You mentioned that earlier. Talking, what is that? How did that become? How did that start?
You're talking about Famous at Home?
Yeah, famous home. Sorry.
Yeah, Famous at Home. Yeah. So Famous at Home really originated out of, let me see here. Where did we start Famous at Home from? I mean, it really started from working with leaders who were coming to us and saying, "Hey, we need help with our marriage. We need help with our family." These were people who typically were like myself, who I might travel to speak, and then I'm not physically present as much as I would like to be in my home. So
Sure.
we work a lot with musicians or Joint Special Operations Command, so guys who literally are deployed for 6 months at a time,
Okay.
and then they want to come back together. Former professional athletes, who are on the road, come back home and trying to re-assimilate back home and that type of thing. And so I was working a lot with these high capacity guys who were trying to figure out quote unquote work life balance.
Okay.
And really, what I found is that we were trying to help, they were longing to be famous at home. It's the one place they wanted to be. So that's really where the name came out of, is just this sense that number one, we're already famous in our heavenly home. As sons and daughters of God, we are famous. And therefore, that allows us, we love because He first loved us. It allows us to be able to show up into our world and not regret at the end of life, not have regrets that we didn't show up well at home and that
Sure.
we weren't famous at home. Because I mean, the reality is every time I come back from a trip, my biggest fans are just cheering me on. They wait up late till I get home.
Cool.
It's like that is, it's a phrase I used to use, is like, that's the greatest red carpet I'll ever walk is through my front door, you know? And so, yeah, we're a lot of times out trying to chase fans, and customers and
Sure.
clients, and we're always trying to chase the next thing, when the reality is that our biggest fans are already right here. And how can we show up for them and live in a way that we didn't work so hard that we neglected the very quote unquote neighbors? Bible says to love your neighbors yourself. Well, my first neighbor is my wife and my children, and to make sure that I love them well first and foremost.
I love that. So where do you see when you're working with a man? Let's talk specifically to the dads. Where do you see that they are struggling the most when they're this idea of famous at home? Where would you see kind of you're typically having to provide the most counsel on the front end?
Yeah, so I think it's a great question. The cry that I hear the most is, I can go to work and lead hundreds of people, and I come home and don't know how to lead my own family.
Yeah.
My dad didn't raise me this way. It wasn't handed to me. I don't have a blueprint for how to do this. This is kind of the longing. And then we live in such a matrix that we're caught up in the rat race, as you were saying earlier, that, you know, we don't really have a blueprint beyond. It's like we don't have permission to try different, to live a simpler life, to live
Sure.
from rest. It's like I need permission. Men need permission. And so I usually start there with a
Okay.
sense of, number one, you have permission to do it differently. And that oftentimes comes out of a place of they themselves understanding how deeply loved that they are. And this sounds really wild, but I genuinely believe, and I've seen this in my own life, that because men are alone, a lot of men that I hear today feel lonely. They don't
Sure.
feel like they have community. And it's within community that we give each other permission to live differently than what the world's offering.
Yeah.
And so I want to offer community to men in a way that they feel, number one, that they're not alone, but number two, that they don't walk away feeling shame. Because as a man, I know early on in my marriage, it was like, what the pattern would be, I didn't pray with my wife. And so then I would start to feel ashamed about that, to the point that I was like, oh, I should probably pray with my wife, but I feel so ashamed already that I don't want to. It's like,
Yeah.
right. And then so
Yeah.
we don't even do it.
Yeah.
And just going, no, like, you can start because you are so deeply loved. We love because He first loved us. The Father so loves us. And I think for men, it's hard to believe, to come to a place where we actually believe that we are deeply loved.
Yeah.
And that's the type of environment that we have a coaching program called the Field Experience, and it's for men through Famous at Home. And so it's for men to learn how to pursue the heart of their wives, the heart of their kids, and lead their family well, and cultivate the fields that God has given them to have authority over. And we usually always start, we always start with, how are you experiencing the love of God for yourself?
I love that.
Because it's out of that overflow that we realize we're not alone. We don't have to live in shame, and that we can step out into the world and lead with the authority and love that Jesus has given us.
Sure. And it's so difficult, right? I mean, the Christian faith is one that you don't have to earn your position. That
Yes, it
that we
is.
that we were given this. That God chose to love us in spite of us. It's not that we've earned this. We haven't earned our salvation. We haven't earned His love. That He chose to give us His Son, Jesus Christ, to die on the cross for our sins, to take the position that we deserved, that he took our place. And it's not
Yeah.
that I worked hard enough to earn this, or I did enough to earn that, or I closed enough deals. That it's like, no, just being, I get that. I receive that. And that's so difficult, especially as a man, speaking for myself,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
it's so difficult to do that because the world will tell you, business will tell you, the culture will tell you, you've got to go out, go get yours, go earn it, go slay, go do all the things that you've got to go do. And, you've heard it said many times, Christianity is the only thing that's done. It's
Yeah.
the only religion that is a 4 letter word. It's not a 2 letter word. Every other religion says you've got to do. And Christianity says, no, it's done.
And as a man, I will say that that has been one of the most, as I live this out and continue to live this out, that has been one of the most difficult transitions to make in my walk with God.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, the more I stopped chasing, the more fruitful my life is becoming in the things that I didn't know mattered,
Cool.
that matter more than what the world tells me. It
Yeah.
matter that in
Yeah.
ways that the world tells me, no, that doesn't matter. This is what matters.
Yeah.
And I find that God is multiplying productivity by me doing things less and chasing less.
Cool.
And to your
Can
point,
you share
yeah.
an example of where you're finding more fruit in your life?
Oh yeah, like so. I mean, it's a very fresh example. My wife had norovirus a couple weeks ago, and so she's down for the count. I've got 3 kids, and I've got work to do, right? So
Yeah.
I'm not only I'm teaching, I'm coaching, I'm in the middle of getting ready, speaking's ramping up, and I've got all these things happening, and now I'm the full time homeschool teacher
Yeah.
and play
Yeah.
partner all at the same time. And I just woke up each day going, God, you know you have created everything that you've created me in such a way that I have everything I need for today.
Yeah.
And whatever doesn't get done wasn't supposed to get done today. And I'm okay with that. And so help me to prioritize the things that I need to do that will have the greatest impact for your kingdom and our family today. And
I
so
love
when I
that.
start with that lens, then what happened was I was finding that I was spending more time with the kids. I was helping them with their schoolwork, and then I would block times that I would go do my work. But I was working way less that week, clearly, less hours,
Sure.
but I was way more intentional about what I was getting done
I love that.
and more intentional with my kids. And the work multiplied itself. Like I got everything absolutely done that needed to get done for that week from a work perspective, but I was with my kids even more than I normally am.
Yeah.
And I saw behavior changes in them. I saw it was just I looked at the back of that week and I went, Lord, you multiplied my joy this week. You multiplied in the past, I would have been so frantic about,
Sure.
oh, I got to get this done. Kids,
Sure.
you guys got to, I got to do that, and probably putting on a show and say, hey, here, buddy, here's Daniel Tiger. Watch Daniel Tiger. I got to get this done. My wife feels that energy. She feels that fear. She feels the drive. And then she doesn't feel like she can fully rest in her sickness. And everyone feels it. This was a disposition that was completely out of abundance and rest, not because of anything I did, but because of my surrender to what he did for me, which was give me everything it's done, as you
Yeah.
said, it's done. I don't have to chase anything.
Yeah.
And again, that's not an overnight, this is an ongoing battle,
Yeah. Sure.
Matthew,
It
but,
definitely is.
but
And
that's an example of it.
yeah, I love that. And it's this idea of, the more I found in my life, the more that I try to hold on tight, the more it seems to fall apart. And the more that I go
Yes.
open-handed to the
Good.
Lord, and the more things seem to kind of quote unquote fall into place, right? That is this idea of I'm not the master of my day. That
Yeah.
that that
Yeah.
I'm submitting myself to my heavenly Father, and I'm saying, Lord, we've navigated things as a family, my personal family. that we've been through seasons of just like total chaos. And
Yeah.
it's been just this utter reliance on, okay, Lord, I need grace for today. Your mercies are new every day, and today I need your grace, and I need you, and I'm going to be
Yeah.
with you, and I know you're going to be with me. I need your presence with me, and I can't do this on my own.
Yeah. That's the that's the most difficult and most rewarding posture to be in.
Yeah, definitely. So Josh, tell me about. Yeah, I love that we're kind of coming up to the end of our time. I appreciate your generosity and sharing with us. A couple questions I kind of love to close on just to get some perspective. Number one, what's a book? Obviously, promote your books. I know y'all have got several. I'll put all those in the show notes. But what's a book if you could get it in the hand of every parent? So let's speak specifically to the parents or the grandparents. Is there a book that you would want to get in their hand?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, I can tell you the most recent book that I would put in their hand isn't even a parenting book, but it has the most profound insight and impact on my parenting of late, and that is Living Fearless by Jamie Winship.
Okay.
And it is a book on identity and learning to teach our kids, teaching us how to find our identity, but then also helping our kids find their God-given identity. And it has been a game changer. I've read it twice in the past. It's now a yearly read for me.
Cool.
Um, the other book from a parenting perspective that I would say is these aren't necessarily, this is not a Christian book, but it's Daniel Siegel's work on, Inside Out. He has a book called Inside Out.
Okay.
The reason that I say that is because, and we talk about this in our books and Famous at Home. I wrote another one on emotional safety called Safe House, is because you can sum up all of parenting research into one primary conclusion, and that's that our kids become who we are. And
Uh,
so I just genuinely believe that my own growth as a human is the greatest gift I can give my kids. And so that's genuinely what I would really recommend is anything that's going to help you grow as a parent, as a husband, as a father, as a mother, as a wife. Um, that's that's the greatest gift we can give our kids.
I love that. So okay, last question. Think back to younger Josh, and what's a piece of advice? Let's call it 10 years ago. You're in the thick of it with your kids. You said it's a really difficult time. What's a piece of advice you wish you would have had at that point?
Man, I would say stop chasing.
I love that.
Exactly what we've been talking about. Stop
Yeah.
chasing. In other words, it is my being, it is my presence as a father and a husband that not just is the greatest significance in my own family, but it is that presence that transforms our community and how we show up in our biblical community, with our neighbors, with our friends, and even with strangers around us. That presence of just being because so many people are just chasing, chasing,
Yeah.
and chasing. And I don't want to be the guy that's just constantly chasing. So I'll end with this thought. It comes out of Abba's Child, which is a book Brendan Manning wrote in 1993. And he said he wrote this in a chapter on the imposter.
Okay.
And, a lot of us walk around with this sense of an imposter or false self. And he said, you can recognize your imposter coming out if you show up in a room going, here I am, here I am. And he says, instead of walking into a room going, here I am, show up in a room going, oh, there you are.
Uh,
And I find that when I walk into a room going, here I am, and it doesn't even have to be the sense of like, hey, look at me, I'm doing this, this, and this.
sure.
Sometimes self-protecting and hiding in the corner is going, here I am, because
Sure.
we're afraid to enter into another person's world. Self-protection and self-promotion are both selfish, and you're going, I'm not entering into the world of another. But in my true self and the gift that because I'm so deeply loved by the Heavenly Father, I can show up in my home and anywhere else going, oh, there you are.
I love that.
And that's the posture at which I try to live out of and keep pursuing every day with Jesus. So
I think it's fantastic. What a fantastic way for us to end. Well, Josh, if somebody's interested in learning more about Famous at Home, your books, your resources, coaching, how they get connected to you. Caveat: I don't expect you to give out your cell phone number. Please don't do that. But how do they get connected to you?
Yeah, famousathome.com is the best place to go and find
Cool.
everything that we're doing. Yeah, we have a men's group coming up called the Field Experience, which we'd love for you to check out as well. So,
Love it. That's fantastic. Well, brother, thank you for being here. Everybody, thank you for pulling up a seat at the family table. We'll see you soon. Thank you for pulling up a chair at the family table. We hope today's conversation has strengthened the bonds that hold us together. Don't forget to follow the show to keep these heartwarming stories coming your way. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe and share it with friends and family. And if there's someone whose family story you think would be a perfect fit for the show, drop their name in the comments. We would love to hear from you and bring more families to the table. Until next time, cherish those moments with your loved ones.